Hello and welcome to the first edition of the Stats Are Facts podcast of the off season. I'll be doing these every Monday for the majority of the off season, and today we're going to recap the Bills' offensive year from a statistical standpoint. And what better way to start us off than with quarterback rookie EJ Manuel, courtesy of ESPN Stats. Looking at him here, he had an alright game. I mean, he battled alright season. He battled injuries the whole year, which was obviously shown in his play. Though he got injured in preseason, was questioned if he was going to play week 1, and he did. Lost to the Patriots, but we're not really going to go into week by week. Just look at how he did stats wise. I mean, he had a 77.7 passer rating, as you can see up here, just short of 2,000 passing yards and 11 passing touchdowns. That's not all that great, especially compared to quarterback Thad Lewis, who was on the Browns last year and had a better passer rating with 81, but about 1,000 less passing yards and only 4 touchdowns. His record was a lot worse. He had 2 wins against the Dolphins, and that's at 3 losses against, as you see down here, the Patriots, Falcons, and never mind. He didn't lose to the Falcons, but he did lose to the Patriots and the Saints. But I mean, his 2 wins he had on the year both came against the Dolphins. Manuel beat a few teams, so I don't know. I like Manuel better. I think he had a better year this year, but I mean, we're definitely want to see him improve. I mean, only 11 passing touchdowns for a quarterback. That's not all that great, even though he didn't play a ton of games. That's definitely got to improve if he's going to be the franchise guy. So I mean, that's something that's going to be important to see as he progresses. So now let's take a look at the running backs. Obviously, great running back year. Let's first take a look at Fred Jackson, the veteran running back for the Bills. Had 896 yards this year and 9 touchdowns. That is great. I mean, he had been injured over the past few years, which has really limited him. People expected C.J. Spiller to make a big step this year, but I mean, Jackson really played that role. I mean, he had a lot of touchdowns this year, and it's great. I mean, I like Fred Jackson as the running back. I don't think they should make any changes just because of they have Spiller coming up. I like them both being the 2-man set. And here we go. C.J. Spiller had 927 yards, but only 2 touchdowns. One of those came on the Thursday night game against the Browns, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, the reason he doesn't have a lot of touchdowns is because he gives the ball up to, or Fred Jackson gets the ball on the line. And as you see here, I mean, and he's had injuries too the whole year as well. I mean, as you see, his slow start kind of streaky. I mean, only week 3 he had only 9 yards against the Jets, but the week before that he ran for 100 yards. He had 4 100-yard games. His biggest game came in the OT loss to the Falcons with 149 yards. He also scored a touchdown in that game, and his other one came in the Browns game. So I don't know. I like the running backs, but I don't think they should make any moves there. What I think they should do is go out and get a receiver, and maybe even get Spiller more into it. I mean, Spiller couldn't catch too. He was listed as a receiver over the past a few years ago, actually. But speaking of receivers, let's take a look at that right now. All right, let's take a look at the receiving game right now, and Scott Chandler was the Bills' leading receiver this season, which is actually pretty shocking to me. Because you expect, I mean, Stevie Johnson coming off 3 straight years of 1,000 yards plus, but this year he had an off year, and Chandler had a good year. Up here you can tell 655 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. He's going into a contract year. A lot of people don't think he will be back, and I agree with that. I don't think that the Bills are going to bring back Chandler, but he was a great help this year, except for that fumble against the Falcons. But I mean, he was pretty consistent for the most part. Let's go week by week looking at his receiving yards: 38, 10, 79, 28, 49, 47, 18, 72, 26, 20. I mean, they're all from like 20 to 60, all in that range, and that's all you really need a tight end to do. But I mean, I would expect him to score more touchdowns. He should have scored more than 2 this year. I mean, look at last year; he scored 6, and same thing with 2011. He also scored 6. But this is his biggest receiving yards, his receiving year of his career. So now let's go into the more receivers. Robert Woods, the rookie receiver out of USC, had a good year as well for the Bills. 3 touchdowns, which the Bills receivers was kind of spread out. There was no receiver with a lot of receiving touchdowns that you see. Woods had 3. Chandler only had 2. Stevie Johnson only had 3. So, but Woods, I mean, he had a pretty good year. He caught Manuel's first touchdown pass of his career, and he also battled injuries. And the Bills had a lot of injuries too this year. But if you take a look at it here, he played a good role. I mean, as the outside man, I think I'd like the Bills to go out and get another receiver in the draft. But I mean, Woods played a good role for the Bills this year. So another rookie who did good this year, Marquise Goodwin. They got him in the 3rd round out of Texas. This guy is lightning fast. He was kick returner. He was pretty explosive from the returning game. Only 283 yards, but he only had 17 receptions and 3 touchdowns. He had big plays, and like here's one thing you can see. He also was injured too in the preseason and through the year. But if you look right here, against the Patriots, he didn't have anything. But then next week, or then a game later, or actually, then he was injured. But when he came back, he had a huge touchdown. Had huge receptions here. So I mean, huge touchdown down here and another big touchdown against the Jets. You know, he was a deep threat, and that's what the Bills need. I can't wait to see what he does next year. A guy who could be that deep play threat is T.J. Graham right here. He had 361 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I was saying here, that the Bills receivers really didn't have a lot of touchdowns per player. The ball was spread around. But Graham's a small guy. He's got to work on his hands, but other than that, I think he'd be all right. I mean, if it comes down to me, I think the way it should go for next year is Woods 1, Stevie 2, Goodwin 3, and maybe draft a guy 2. So that's just how my top 3 would go. And maybe even Stevie 1. I really like Robert Woods, though, and Stevie Johnson, I just think Woods is a better receiver than him. So that's the receiving game. So now let's go into some team stats. The Bills had 3,103 passing yards on the year. Most of those came from E.J. Manuel and Thad Lewis. Then a little bit of came from Jeff Toole. But I mean, the completion percentage was pretty good. They outbeat their opponents. The Bills completed 57% of their passes, while their opponents only completed 55. The rushing game also was good. A total of 2,307. Most of that, like I said before, came from C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson, and then a little bit of Thad Lewis, Tashard Choice before the Bills released him. And receiving game, of course, it's going to be about the same as the passing game. But I mean, the Bills. Let's take a look at how they competed with the rest of the NFL. Let's look at total offense of yards. The Bills finished 19th overall for the NFL, which isn't awful, but it could be better definitely. In yards, so I mean, passing yards, they're going to be lower though, as you can see all the way down here at 28th, and then rushing yards is pretty good as well though, second in the NFL. So that's the one thing they don't really need to work on is their rushing game, but I mean their passing game, and that's really all they have to work on. I think when it comes to the offense, I mean the Bills were one of the best teams that don't really have a lot of needs this year. Going into the draft, I mean, maybe get a defensive guy or a receiver to help out that receiving game. But, yeah, so that's going to do it for this first ever edition of the Stats Are Facts podcast. But first, let me get you a quick stat of the day, because the point of the podcast is stats. As you all know, the Super Bowl 48 will be played in MetLife Stadium. The Seahawks versus the Broncos. The Seahawks don't have a single player on their team that has won a Super Bowl. The last team to do that is the '90 Bills when they lost to the Giants. They went on to lose 3 straight after that. So that's going to do it. Check out all of our stuff right here on Buffalo Bills, realbillsnow.blogspot.com. And follow us on Twitter at BillsNowBlog. And another podcast coming up next Monday. We'll be recapping the defensive season. And thank you. I'll see you next time.